Welcome, everybody, once again to another episode here at the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A, helping you be fit and live free by taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise. I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project. Today's episode is sponsored once again by the RDP Library. All of the books that I've written to help you get the most out of exercise, a little bit of weight loss advice, diet as well, all in a very efficient package that doesn't require radical transformation and high maintenance habits like micro workouts, grind style calisthenics, mostly about body weight training, because that is our method of choice here at the RDP, because you don't need a gym, you don't need fancy equipment, you just need some determination and a little bit of know-how. And that's why I write all those books, including the new quick read series that I have at the RDP merch store. Links to that, and I'm going to be referencing a lot of those, are down below in the description. So today's episode is all about hard-won or hard-learned lessons in fitness that you kind of only learn until it's like too late. Like you only get these kinds of perspectives after years of being in the industry, so to speak, either as a coach or a trainer or a die-hard exercise enthusiast. And unfortunately, many people fail to ever understand these sorts of things, and it kind of compromises their ability to understand what the path to success in fitness is really like, whether you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to lose weight or just improve performance, feel better, whatever the case may be. Because let's be honest, social media and the fitness media out there has greatly warped and distorted our perceptions about what we can expect from our fitness journey. We think that it should be a lot easier than it often is. We think that results should come a lot quicker, that they should be a lot easier to maintain, and that they're often a lot more like life transforming. Like, oh, once I lose the weight, once I've got the abs, then my life is going to be so different and people are going to respect me more and I'm going to feel totally different. And to a large degree, that's not at all the case. I know plenty of people who've had some significant transformations in their body and in their health, and they find, yeah, it didn't really do a whole heck of a lot one way or the other. In some cases, that does happen, but I'll be getting into a little bit more of the details on why that does happen and how you can get the most out of your fitness journey. But we'll dump right into it here. And of course, as always, I'm going to be asking or answering your questions. And it's one of those things that's a little more free form as always. So thank you very much, everybody, coming on in and contributing to the Q&A. So let's get to the first hard-won lesson. And this one hits people really hard sometimes, and maybe they learn this after several months at the earliest. A lot of times it's much more later, like after several years of training. Some people don't even learn this ever, but when it does, it can be really disheartening if you don't prepare yourself for it. And that is the simple fact that most people will not succeed in reaching their goals when it comes to health and fitness. I was once showing someone, some images of fitness models. I forget exactly why. And they said, okay, so out of 100 people, how many of them do you think would achieve a body like this? I'm like, 100 people. I think you'd have to have a sample size of at least 10,000 people to get some individuals who look like this. And they kind of taken aback a little bit like that. I was like, yeah, seriously, like that outcome that you're seeing on social media and the magazines, that is so incredibly rare. It is so hard to come by. And people think, well, I'm sure if I put in the work and I put in the effort and I learn the right, it's like, no, even under the best of circumstances, most people will not even get halfway there. And the reason, and I know that's disheartening to say, which is why I'm tackling it right off the bat, because if that is your goal of, if I don't reach that, then I'm going to just completely fail and stuff, you're probably going to fail. Your chances of failing, quote unquote, in fitness are astronomically high. It's almost guaranteed if that's the only way that you can count yourself as successful. Now, the better way to interpret this, because when people do realize this, is to make it more of a game of find success on your own terms. Because if your only definition of success in fitness is to have the perfect body and to win the ultimate championship and to be the best there ever was and to have the perfect end result, if that's the only way you can succeed, you are almost guaranteed to fail, because almost nobody reaches that. And even the people who do reach that, they don't maintain it for any length of time, of course. So when we have more of an idea of success on our own terms, not only is that succeed in your relative sphere, because anybody can have success relative to themselves. Everybody can make progress. Everyone can get stronger and feel better and look better. Everybody can do that. Absolutely. But you also give yourself the flexibility and permission to go after the specific type of success that is important to you. Because there's lots of ways you can succeed in fitness. You can be extremely strong, like a power lifter. You can definitely improve your aesthetic shape, like a model. You can have much better health and energy and vitality and the energy to last all day on the job and stuff. So there's all sorts of ways that you can find success in fitness. However, if you don't define for yourself what success means to you, you actually run the risk of following the wrong type of success. Because if I had a nickel for every time someone would achieve a level of success where they're like, great, I got a 2.5 pound deadlift. I'm like, great, awesome, congratulations. They're like, yeah, but I just want to look good naked. I don't care how strong I am. I just want to have abs and look really good with a bathing suit on. It's like, okay, you found the wrong kind of success then. You were going after the wrong thing. Or someone who's like, I've been pursuing abs and the perfect body and having aesthetics that were absolutely jaw-dropping, but man, my joints hurt, my energy level's low, I feel like crap all the time, I can't fight a cold or a virus to save my life in the winter and stuff, and they're going after all this stuff. It's like, I just want to feel good again. It's like, okay, again, you're going after the wrong type of success. So you have to define success for yourself when it comes to fitness. You have to define it for what is important to you, because you're not going to be able to achieve everything. And the more higher levels of success you want, the more you're going to have to sacrifice other things, like models and figure competitors I've talked to. And they would even be somewhat accomplished, like state champions and stuff. And they're like, this is great. And like, oh yeah, man, but oh my God. I had to sacrifice almost everything else about my health and fitness in order to achieve this one milestone. Like my health suffers, my strength suffers, my performance suffers. I couldn't do anything to save my life as an athlete. It's like I had to sacrifice all the other goals in order to achieve this high level of this other goal. So define success for yourself. Some people, they honestly just don't care how much they can bench press. It's just not important to them. It never was kind of the goal for me either. I never added up the amount of weight on a bar or anything like that. I just didn't care what it was. I just wanted to make my muscles work really hard. That was my goal in my workouts, progressively harder. So when it came to understanding what is important to you, can be a real game changer, because it prevents you from following after the wrong things, because it's going to take a lot of time and energy and other resources. And if you're following someone else's definition of success, chances are you may very well fail. But two, if you succeed, you're still going to fail because you're not getting what you truly want. So find success for yourself and make progress in and of itself part of the process. Because if your only definition of success is, I want to get to single digit body fat and I'm not going to be happy till I get there, you're always going to feel like you're failing no matter how much you accomplish. So most people don't, quote, succeed until they're succeeding on their own terms. Let's get to some questions here. S. Lee coming on saying, hey, Matt, since I start doing high reps, like 300 push-ups a day, a couple times a week, my muscles get bigger. Yes. Will that be temporary because is it in the pump or is it the strength? Oh, such a good question, S. Lee. Excuse me. Still fighting off a little bit of a cough here. Last week was really rough health-wise for me. So a couple of things. One is, yes, there's definitely some residual inflammation that comes, especially with that type of high repetition training. This happens a lot of times where if someone takes several days off or a week off from training, they feel like their muscles are kind of shrinking, but they're not, of course. It's just the inflammation that is typically present when we're doing strength training, especially the higher rep stuff, is now just healing. You don't have quite as much water retention and stuff in the muscles. You don't have quite as much of that kind of residual pump. So it feels like you're shrinking, but you're really not. It's just you don't have quite as much in the muscle. So there's part of that, absolutely. But sure, you can build muscle with a very wide range of training parameters. As the research these days heavily suggests that a lot of the stimulus for hypertrophy comes from just basically cooking out the muscle, bringing it to a high state of fatigue and then letting it recover. You can do that pretty much with any kind of training, any kind of exercise, any kind of rep ranges and stuff. Although it typically does get a lot harder to do that when the repetitions get a lot higher. Now, I'm assuming you're not doing 300 push-ups in one single shot. Of course, you're 300 a day. So when you're looking at training, you still want to make sure it's heavy enough that you're doing that. Like, you're not going to build huge legs walking, even though you can walk until you're literally collapsing on the ground. So when you're going with the high rep stuff, it's fine, but you're going to have a diminishing rate of return. And that's why I'm always telling people, especially in the calisthenics world, make sure you're learning about progressive and weighted calisthenics, like my book down below, shameless plug, in order to increase the resistance of your training. Because if there's anything that is going to give you the best bet on having bigger muscles that are bigger even without that little pump, it's having a variety of training stimuli. So you're training heavy and you're training light, you're training higher volume and lower volume and everywhere in between. And you're not going to be able to do that if your technique always stays the same. You have to make sure that you have that progressive calisthenics theory dialed in. And that's something, again, I guess you could say that's another lesson that a lot of bodyweight practitioners just fail to learn until it's too late. And they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I understood this stuff 5 years ago. I would have been a lot further along my journey. So it's a little bit of both, but it's not like if you stop next week, something's going to be totally different. All right, next question here. Damn, I can't seem to, there we go. Cristobal, it's good to see you again. Hey, Matt, can you tell us what are the best exercises in calisthenics for strength gains that have carryover to lifting moves? Very good question. All right. So when it comes to exercise, always remember that any type of exercise you do does the same thing, which is the functional ability to, or the adaptive capacity to accompany the functional demand you're placing on your body. In other words, to do the damn thing you're doing, specifically, said principles, specific adaptation to impose demand. There is no such thing as any kind of exercise of any sort that will make you strong at everything. Everything will get you optimally stronger for the exact thing you're doing. And then there's functional carryover to anything else that has similarities to what you're doing. And the more similar it is, the more effective that carryover is going to be. But the less similar it is, the less carryover there's going to be. So there's nothing you're ever going to do that's going to make you supremely strong at everything. It's always going to have a limited carryover away from that thing. However, the basic movement patterns that you can engage in are going to have the best carryover simply because they're the most fundamental ways we use our body. So in that case, primarily, push, pull, squat is going to be basically it. And that's why I wrote an ebook on it called Push, Pull, Squat. It's what you want to focus on, those three movement patterns for the greatest functional carryover, for the ability for building up your physique, for the ability to have strength that carries over to other things. That's why most athletes, it'll be squats are one of the staples for you. Basically, if you can get better and stronger at any type of squatting technique, that's probably going to have a lot of carryover to anything you're going to use your legs for. However, things that are more fancy and tricky and circus tricky and stuff like that are just not going to have as much functional carryover. Now, an example might be if you have a weak link, though. Like I got into front lever training many years ago, and just by playing around with it, I was able to strengthen up my lats, and suddenly carrying treadmills up, winding the staircase got a heck of a lot easier. It had nothing to do with the front lever. It had everything to do with the fact that I could isometrically engage my lats more. So you're going to find that sort of thing here and there randomly, but basically focus on basic fundamental movement patterns: push, pull, and squat. That's going to have the most carryover. Handstand push-ups will carry over to overhead press. But when it comes to things that are much more skill-based techniques that are very different, you're not going to have nearly as much carryover. So bridges are an extension exercise. So is a barbell snatch. If you could do a bridges all day, every day, and be the best bridger in the world, you're still probably going to be pretty weak at the barbell snatch just because they're so different. And the opposite goes for that too. I once trained a guy who was a power lifter, very strong deadlifter, couldn't do a table bridge to save his life because they just were not, the functionality of the two was different enough that he was like, I just can't get my hips up with this. It's not that he didn't know how to use his muscles. They weren't strong, but the movement itself wasn't strong because it was technically so different. So look for similar movement patterns for that. But the other takeaway is if you have a specific functional activity you want to be stronger at, practice that functional activity. Don't be like, if I get strong at X, I'll be good at Y. No, if you want to get strong at Y, practice Y. Okay, practice letter Y, not why you're doing it, sort of thing. Questions are coming in fast. I love it. Welcome, everybody. Oliver DT. Hey, Matt, do you still do pre-fatigue training? And what's your favorite pre-fatigue combinations? Yeah, I still do. I like it just because it just makes it easier, well, to hit the muscles and fatigue it. So for the chest and for my push chain days, it's chest flies and tricep extensions. For my pull chain days, I do the straight arm lat pull downs or the pull ups, as I made a video for it a week or so ago. That's really good, as well as bicep curls. And when it comes to the legs, hamstring curls and sissy squats, or AKA leg extensions. So basically, I'm just taking a couple of joints and doing the single joint stuff. And I'll do that for a couple of sets. I don't want to pre-fatigue too much, because if I really drive my chest into the ground with chest flies, I'm like, okay, here we go. Dips, and I can only do like 2 dips. It's like, well, I just kind of screwed the pooch there. So I would probably usually do 2 sets of each of those, getting a pretty good amount of fatigue, and then go on to things. It's also very good as a strategy for calisthenics. If you don't have access to any sort of weighted calisthenics, or you're not really good at a progressive technique for calisthenics, so you just feel like I can't push my chest very hard with push-ups and dips and stuff like that because I'm stronger. I'm having trouble with things like progressive push-ups and I don't have weights. Well, you do the pre-fatigues first, and theoretically, it makes it feel a lot harder because you're getting that pre-fatigue in. So that's the strategy that I like to use a lot of times. David Baker saying, hey, Matt, how necessary is training the different angles of flexion, say 3 different angles of the curl when training isometrics? Not as important as you may think. A lot of times in isometrics, people will say, oh, you need to do this in order to have complete strength in your range of motion. It's not really that true. I guarantee you, if you only trained one angle of strength with isometrics, you wouldn't notice any strength or loss of functional ability whatsoever. It is something that is scientifically there. You may find in the scientific literature, they would say it's a statistically significant difference, which is scientific speak for saying there's a difference, but you wouldn't notice it in real life. We're only noticing it because we're scientifically measuring it with very sensitive equipment kind of thing. So it's not that important. However, when it comes to training variety, when I was just talking about earlier, how it's good to expose the muscle to a variety of stimuli to keep it getting bigger and stronger, it helps a lot for that. So if you're feeling like your training is getting a little bit stale, a little bit long in the tooth, then yes, vary up the angle in your isometrics for that variety of stimulus. That's why you want to do it. But when it comes to actually building up the muscles and the strength and everything, it's really not as important as many people may think. I skipped a question here real quick. I wanted to make sure I don't. There we go. And Santiago, it's good to see you. Amen. Do you think that people should focus on performance rather than fatigue when the goal is hypertrophy? No, I say focus on the fatigue. Straight up. A little bit of both, of course, because obviously when it comes to the training stimulus we do want to improve our muscular work capacity. You need to have more tension in the muscle. You need to have more of the endurance and the stamina of it. But if you always do 10 reps, if you always do 10 sets, I can't talk today. If you can only do 3 sets of 10 reps to failure on pull-ups, and you always do it that way, and you always leave yourself completely fatigued, but if your metrics and performance don't change, your muscles will never change. However, when it comes to focusing on performance, sometimes it's really easy and tempting to kind of shirk your range of motion a little bit, or your technique, and you're kicking your legs and stuff. This is one of the reasons why I'm always telling you, if you're here for fitness, you're not here for sport. Sport and fitness are completely different objectives, because in the world of training the body, if you're training for sport, AKA performance, you want to embrace efficiency. You want to make your body really good at improving your ability to grow your metrics of whatever sport you're going after. But if you're going after fitness, you want exactly the opposite. So let me give you a quick little example for this, where I used to be a bike racer in college and stuff, and I would go for bike rides with the intention of getting more fit. And I mean, I would leave it in high gear, going up a hill. I would be grinding my gears. I want my legs screaming bloody murder. I want my heart beating so hard I can taste lung in my throat. I want to push my body so hard when I'm riding my bike that I feel like I'm just going to collapse. Well, I tried that strategy when I was racing, and everyone around me and my coach was like, "What are you doing? That is not the way you want to race. You want to go into a lower gear and have higher RPMs and draft after people and take it easy and take your," and exactly the opposite of what I was doing. And when I listened to them, of course, I was doing better as a racer because I was embracing efficiency. So when it comes to your hypertrophy, you want to embrace inefficiency. Do keep a good eye on that metric, though. You do still want to be getting stronger and stuff, but inefficiency is going to burn you out faster. That's what you want. That's the whole point of the pre-fatigue. If you came to me and you're like, I want to be able to do 20 pull-ups, pre-fatigue is the worst thing you could possibly do, because you're going to do your curls and your lat pulls and everything first, and then you're maybe going to get 6 pull-ups. But if we get a nice little warm-up of a couple of rows, I'm like, great, pull-ups, go for it. That's going to give you the best metric of that. So have fatigue as your primary objective, performance as secondary. But you do, of course, want kind of both with those sort of things. Zarati Karate's coming in. Hey, Matt, what's your favorite exercise to hit the long head of the triceps for hypertrophy? Anything that extends your arm. Don't worry too much about, one head versus the other. I don't know anybody who's ever built up one head of their triceps or only 2 heads of their triceps. Pretty much anybody who's got good, defined, well-developed triceps just gets their triceps working. They don't worry about the heads sort of thing. I mean, yeah, as a professional bodybuilder, if you're being judged on 2% of a difference between the mass of the symmetry between one side or the other, then it matters. But for the average individual, don't worry about it. So you've got your tricep extensions on suspension straps. You can go with neutral grips and everything. Vary up the grips and stuff. And again, for variety, to give yourself some differences in how your body is feeling, to change up the flavor of things. But honestly, don't worry about it. Just blast the mother living hell out of those triceps, and I guarantee you all 3 heads will be working. It's not like if you do a certain type of exercise, you're totally neglecting one of the heads. All right, let's go on to lesson number 2. That is just far too late for people to learn the hard way. This one kind of goes double with 2 things, so let's get right to it. It's your results that you want are probably going to take a hell of a lot longer than you think. And it's probably going to take a hell of a lot more effort than you think. In his autobiography, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that if he knew how much work it was going to take to become a bodybuilding champion, he never would have done it. He never would have started. If he knew right from the get-go how much it was going to take, he wouldn't have done it. He's like, no way, man, I'm not going to push myself that much. And this is another one of those things that can be really hard to hear, because we all like to think that we've got the stones to push ourselves hard enough, that we have what it takes to put in the time and the effort and the work that is required. And we all feel like we're all working hard, right? We all feel like what we're doing is a good enough effort. But the fact of the matter is that most of us are not really prepared for the actual amount of time and effort that it really takes. Now, I personally kind of got set up early in life to really appreciate the long haul when it comes to seeking worthwhile pursuits, because I started martial arts when I was 10. And from the get-go, especially in many martial arts circles, they're like, yeah, this rank of black belt and stuff, you might get there in 30 years, 40 years. I'm going to be testing for my 6th degree black belt this November. I've been practicing for 35 years. Most people don't do anything for more than 6 months, right? So things are going to take a long time. But that can be a good thing, because when people ask me, it's like, I've been doing this thing for 3 months and nothing's happened. It's like 3 months. Yeah, that's not a whole lot of time in the grand scheme of things. I know, but when you're starting out, it feels like a long time. But once you've been training for 5 years, 3 months doesn't feel like a long time. And as far as effort goes, that's another thing that we need to be aware of as well, because most of us have a very poor perception of how far and hard we can truly push ourselves. If you ask the average individual how hard they work, they'd be like, oh yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, 9 to 10 every time. But then if you got them into a more dire situation, they would find that their perception of how hard they push themselves would be grossly under underrated. Again, bike racing. This happened to me when I got into it. I thought riding my bike for a certain time and distance and level of intensity was really hard workout. And then after a year of racing collegiately, I was like, that was barely a warm up. Like that wasn't even close to a really hard workout from what I thought it was. And we could take this with a couple different ways of looking at it. One is like, oh my gosh, it's going to take so much more than I thought. Like, screw this, I'm out. But the other thing is it can be very empowering to know you can push yourself to that level. Because remember that personal transformation physically requires personal transformation internally. You are not going to survive this process. All serious change as a human being is terminal. The person you are when you start out is not going to live through it. You are going to have to change who you are fundamentally. But that's a good thing. You're going to get stronger inside. You're going to have more discipline. You're going to have more tenacity. You're going to have more motivation. You're going to have more inner strength that you can apply to everything else in life. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you learn to push yourself to those higher levels. So take this as a good thing. It's probably going to take more time and more effort, more energy than you think. But I guarantee you that at the same time, the rewards are going to be far more than you think they are. We get into this fitness game because we think it's going to change our lives in so many ways. The reality is it's going to probably change it in other ways too, in ways you can't even fathom or even appreciate at this stage in the game. Let's get to some more questions here. Joseph Bello saying, hello, Matt, talking about pre-fatigue. When I do squats, I do a wall sit for 30 seconds to 1 minute. Then I squat. Very good. 15 squats and hold at the bottom for 25 seconds, 10 squats, hold for 10 seconds, 5 squats, hold for 15 seconds. Yeah, isometrics are great pre-fatigue for that. You can use a simple, the ISO trainer from World Fit is a great way to go about that. Great way to establish muscle connection as well. It's one of those things that is just really easy to implement and get going with a simple strap. And it takes very little time and effort, but it has big rewards. That's why I always recommend it in my grind style calisthenics approach. Cristobal saying, hey Matt, what do you think of having a very minimalist exercise selection for building muscle, like push-ups, pull-ups, dips, squat, and some isometric only? No isolation exercises. Very good. Yeah, and that's basically what a lot of my push-pull squat program is based off of. I've seen some of the most impressive physiques that people have developed, and it's always very basic, which is another thing I've got here. I'll just jump right to it. Another lesson is that it doesn't take nearly as many types of exercise as you think it does. When you're starting off, I always can tell the beginners when they're like, here's my program, and they've got like 5 different pulling exercises, or like, here's my arm routine. And it's like, why in the world do you have 6 curl variations? How many different ways do you need to bend your elbow, man? But as you get more advanced and experienced in this whole fitness thing, especially strength training, you come to realize it's like, all I need is X, Y, Z, and maybe T, and that's going to cover most of my bases. So it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results are going to come from the basic, simple compound stuff. Push, pull, squat. Maybe a little bit of some hinge movement and stuff, depending on what your modalities are. So that's a great way. It's a good approach. However, I don't encourage people to be like, oh, I don't do the isolation stuff. No, it's not functional. No, it's not athletic. No, that stuff is awesome. It's great. It's wonderful. And the compound stuff is really, really good, but it's not going to be enough for everybody all the time. Sometimes you're just going to have a movement or two that's used as accessory work. Now, I don't encourage people to get too far into using like a bicep curls all day long and then maybe hitting a set of pull-ups once in a blue moon. But I keep wanting to say isometric. The isolation stuff is very valuable, and not just for aesthetics, for performance as well. There's a reason why physical therapy offices are filled with isolation machines, because it's really good for bringing a body part up to par and getting it online and getting it to work the way it should, which is very important for performance. So this whole idea of like isolation is not good for performance is complete BS. I guarantee you, God, in Taekwondo, the number of people I know who are like, oh man, I did these leg extension machine. for my knee in physical therapy, and my kick is so much stronger now. Like, yeah, imagine that. You made your quads stronger for knee extension, which a lot of our kicks have a very strong knee extension component. Again, going back to that functional carryover I was talking about earlier, it's no surprise that sitting on a leg extension machine may not seem functional, but when you're throwing a turning kick, it's going to have a lot of power to it. So the isolation stuff is very valuable, but don't discredit it too much. You don't have to do it. You don't have to keep it as a big thing, but keep it in the back of the toolbox for when you need it. It's like any other sort of tools. When you're I've got tools in my toolbox that I use once in a blue moon, but boy, when I need them, I'm really glad I have them. Let's get to a couple more here. Wasatch Wizard is coming on. What do you know? What you've not hitting 10 and 10, but have a hard time pushing yourself that hard. Very good. So this goes into my next point that I wanted to make. This is a duality of fitness that's kind of hard to understand. One is you have to become very self-reliant and self-dependent on this fitness thing. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to come to take care of you. No one's going to come and knock on your door at night and say, are you eating a proper diet? No one's going to come and say, are you going to be working out for your workout tomorrow morning? Yes, you can have temporary things like coaches and trainers and things like that to kind of keep you on track. But at the end of the day, the long game of this is won by those who become more self-dependent and self-reliant. You make yourself do the thing. And that includes pushing yourself to the next level. There's a couple of ways you can do this. The one is you just keep a log as to what you're doing. And then you look at the log and you're like, okay, I got 40 pull-ups in 3 minutes. You got to beat that. There's no two ways about it. You got to beat that. Or you ran a 5K in 28 minutes. Like, you got to beat that. Just having that little bit that says you've got to beat your previous self and knowing what that is can be a big way to step things up. But don't forget that the motivation to push yourself also comes from just an emotional component to it. And sometimes that has to happen from more of a circumstantial thing in life, where either A, you get really pissed off and fed up with what you currently have. And I've seen this many times where people finally make a transformation where they look at themselves and their circumstances and they're like, you know what? I have had it up to here with being this way, whatever it is. I have totally sick of it. It's no longer this kind of sucks. I don't like this anymore. They reach a breaking point and they go from I don't like this to hell with this, expletive, screw you guys, I'm out of here. I would rather be raked across a bed of hot coals and stay where I'm at. And that it comes emotionally. Something has to change inside of you in order for that to happen. And when you have that happen, boy, you're going to push yourself a heck of a lot harder. I guarantee it. Or sometimes it's a positive thing where people will say, oh my gosh, I got exposed to this new level of performance or this new physique, and I want it so bad. It's all I can think about. And that can be a good thing too. So a lot of times being able to push yourself to that higher level is a change in your own perspective, how you feel about something. And if you figure out how to do that at will, let me know. But usually it's just life circumstances that cause that to happen. But the other part of that dichotomy is, one, you have to become more self-reliant, self-dependent. You've got to be your own best friend, if you will. But on the other hand, you're not going to be able to do this whole thing on your own. You're not going to be able to learn everything you need to learn on your own through trial and error. You have to have, if you want to really get anywhere, you have to have some degree of assistance from an external source, hopefully one-on-one coaching, someone in person, someone you can meet and see and ask questions. I try to do the best I can with this sort of thing here, but you can't do this thing entirely on your own. You have to get help at some point along the road. So it's a weird dichotomy in fitness of you have to become self-reliant, self-dependent, and autonomous in fitness because you're the one sailing this ship. No one's going to do it for you. But at the same time, you also can't do it all on your own. You're going to have to get some sort of training and instruction in order to get where you want to go. But if you can blend those two together, you'll be absolutely unstoppable. And understanding how you can push to those higher levels will most certainly come from the combination of the two. Because a lot of times it does just simply take a coach saying, all right, slap on another 10 pounds onto the bar. And in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, oh, well, what, another 10 pounds? And he's like, yeah, you're right. Put another 30 pounds on. I can't do that 30. Are you crazy? I can't. Oh, I guess I can do that kind of thing. Happens all the time in my line of work. I'll tell people to step up to a higher level. They'll give me a little guff sometimes, like, are you sure? Like, yeah, sure. And then they go and they do it, and they're like, oh, I guess I can do that. It's just when you have someone coaching you or helping you, you're just getting in that extra perspective, usually one with a lot more experience than what you have, to show you what you really can do and where you really can go and what you really do need to do in order to be at a higher level. And chances are you're just not going to get that on your own. It's just not going to happen. Nobody's immune to that one. You could be the best athlete in the world. I mean, the best athletes in the world have coaches for exactly that reason. Steph Curry and LeBron James and my Denver Nuggets out here, they're kicking Laker ass right now. They have a coach. They're the best basketball players, or some of the best basketball players in the nation. They have a coach for a good reason. They're not entirely self-dependent on themselves. All right, Wolfie Dragon's in. Good to see you, my friend. Let's get to some more here. Elliot Telfer saying, hey, Matt, hello from Scotland. Very good. I've always wanted to go to Scotland. By the way, folks, I am headed to London this fall. If you are in London in October, mid-October or so, hit me up. Let's get together for a potential workout. I'm meeting a calisthenics training buddy out there and going to see my Buffalo Bills as they play the Jaguars. But if you're in London, hit me up. Let's see if we can get together for a drink and maybe a workout. But anyway, Scotland, I'm moving to Calgary for 2 months and will be training outdoors. Good. What's the best advice for your training habits being completely abandoned in a new environment? Well, funny you should ask, my friend, because I'm in a new environment now. I just moved from Littleton to Denver here about a month ago, and everything's up in a tizzy, where my commute is different, my resources is different. I no longer have my bodyweight master set up. It's in hibernation right now. I've got everything is totally different. And that can be a little disheartening at first, but always remember that every environment has its own new, unique resources and abilities. So yeah, I don't have my bodyweight master anymore, but I've got this dash from wildgym.com, which is awesome. And this gives me the ability, I can lean back and do things like bicep curls and flies, which I couldn't do on the bodyweight master because it wasn't anchored to anything. But this sucker is anchored very well to the wall, so I can really like hang back and do things that I couldn't do before. Granted, I can't get underneath these bars like I could on the bodyweight master, but that's just it, is every environment you have has its pros and its cons. You're never going to have any type of environment or equipment that's best at everything. So when you get to your new place, don't try to be too dogmatic of, okay, I did this exercise this way and at this height with this tool and all these other sorts of things. Be playful for what you have. I would suggest take a week and just play with your workouts. Don't even log them. Don't even have a strict workout routine. Just keep an eye out for what do you have in your environment. Maybe you'll find some cool pull-up bars outside. Maybe you'll find some dip bars and a playground, or maybe just a suitable tree limb that is the perfect height for hanging a suspension strap set up on, and that gives you everything that you need to work with. Look around your environment, see what you have for your resources, play with it for a week, and start to develop new routines and new exercises that you can really dial in. Because I know it can be scary going to a new environment, but I promise you it's an opportunity for new growth and new discovery about what you can do with your calisthenics, and it's going to be much better in the long run. So have that open mind, be playful and creative, and best of luck in Calgary. Excuse me. That cat is saying, hey, Matt, have you coached anyone with weight loss issues? I can't seem to stay on a diet for more than a week or two. Any advice? You're the best. Thanks for all the content. Very good, that cat. Oh, of course, yeah. Any coach needs to be comfortable with weight loss and weight management goals, because a lot of people come to us for exactly that. One of my first ever clients was looking to lose a significant amount of weight. We're still absolute best friends. So a couple of things is, don't keep doing what isn't working. And this is one of the things that keeps coming up with people like, I keep trying these diets, I can't stick to them. I'm like, well, then stop dieting. Because I'll tell you something that's a little funky, and this can be another thing that people only learn too late. Almost nobody with weight loss success ever follows a diet. Okay, it almost never happens. I used to work in a gym. We had over 30 coaches and trainers on staff. 30 of us. Most of us are very fit, very lean and stuff. No one ever follows a diet. Any type of, and by diet, I mean the stuff of like, paleo, keto, vegan, fasting, anything that's like, don't eat this way, don't eat these foods. Almost nobody who has ever lean and managed their weight ever does that stuff. It's very, very rare. And the people who are doing that, they're doing it temporarily, where they'll do it for a few months or something. So that's one of the things that I think also we could say is another thing that people only learn too late, is that most of the success when it comes to fitness, building muscle, losing weight and stuff, is not done with the popular stuff. Most people who build muscle aren't worried about their routine. Most people who successfully get the strength that they want aren't looking up the latest research fads and trends and gimmicks. Most people who lose weight, they're not doing anything weight loss trendy at all. As far as, what are the celebrities doing to lose weight? None of them are doing any of that stuff. It's pretty rare. When it comes to losing the weight and sustainability, it's the boring stuff that we usually don't like to hear that produces kind of a slower result. But as I was coaching one young gal earlier this week, usually when people come to me for weight loss advice, the first thing I tell them is go for what you're drinking versus what you're eating, because liquid calories can add up a hell of a lot faster than food calories. And I know people hate to hear it, but I've got to say it. But a lot of times that's alcohol. The bane of a lot of people's existence is alcohol. I was once at a party one time, a sports party, and this guy was talking to me, and he had this gut, a full-on gut, like a beach ball under his shirt kind of gut. And we were talking, and he was like, I heard you're a mountain biker and a backcountry skier and stuff. And we're chatting, and he's like, yeah, I love mountain biking. I'm out there like 4 days a week, and and he's so active. He's so like, holy smokes, man, you're an awesome athlete. This is fantastic. He's like, yeah, I just can't lose his gut. And I'm like, I've been talking to you for like the past 90 minutes, and you've had 5 drinks in that time. That's why. Like, I didn't call him out like that. Of course, I used some more, bedside manner and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of times what we're consuming in liquid calories is the best place to go. I know it's tough. I know it kind of sucks to hear, but there you go. You could have the perfect diet as far as food, but if you're crushing liquid calories like crazy, that's going to have a serious caloric hit to you. Check out my book, Calorie Hacking, down below in the merch store. It's only available in the merch store there, the Calorie Hacking. That's my kind of weight loss strategy. Doesn't require any special diet, doesn't require any sort of eating patterns or anything like that. It's just a strategic way for weight loss, which can be a good way to go about it. And that's where I would encourage you to start on the journey that I would recommend. Moving along, Malcolm, same Hema. What do you think of this 3-day split? Monday legs, Wednesday back and arms, Friday chest and shoulders. Fantastic. Yeah. You can work out however you want, my friends. It really doesn't matter very much. Use whatever split. You can train as frequently as you want or as infrequently. You can literally train however the hell you want to train. The things that make your workouts effective is, one, can you just get the work in? Okay, that's the first thing, obviously. Whenever someone comes to me and they're like, I can't seem to get results, I always look for where's the inconsistency with their work. Because that's another thing that people learn too late in their routines, is they're looking for what's the greatest diet, what's the best routine, what's the type of training, what's the fanciest exercise, what's this? They're not thinking about sustainability. Rule number 1, if you can't do it all the time, it's never going to work. Okay, so if you're doing a workout program or you're doing an exercise or a diet or whatever, and you're like, after a couple of weeks, you're like, boy, dude, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Big red flag. I always tell people you should follow the 3 to 5 rule. Start up a new program or a habit or whatever, in 3 to 5 days, ask yourself, can you do it for 3 to 5 weeks? After 3 to 5 weeks, can you do it 3 to 5 months? After 3 to 5 months, can you do it the next 3 to 5 years? At each stage of that, the answer had better damn well be, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, sure. I got that. Yeah. It shouldn't be like, well, if I really knuckle down and I've really got my willpower and I'm really, no, you're screwed. If that's your attitude, you're absolutely screwed. because you cannot put that level of effort into it long term. That's just simply impossible. The only way you stand any chance of sustainability, of getting what you want, is if you have habits that you can maintain with as little effort as possible. It's the only chance you've got. Now, of course, that's relatively different for everybody. When you're starting out, the habit that you can maintain with a reasonably low level of effort may be just walking around the block and doing 10 push-ups a day. As you get more advanced, it could be running 10 miles a day. Like, oh, that's insane. It's like, yeah, but it's actually fairly easy for me to do. It's not that hard. Okay, great. Level of effort is different for everybody, but you've got to customize it for your level. Don't look at someone as like, man, they do 300 push-ups every single day. I got to do that. And after a week, you're like, I don't know how longer I can keep this up. It's a huge red flag. You're not going to sustain it. You have to be able to sustain it. So when you're planning out your workout programs, like, what if I do this Monday, Wednesday? That's the number one thing, is, can you just stick to something? But if you're like, I'm going to do push-ups every single day, and you're like, I can't maintain that very easily, then you have to change it. I don't care how optimal it is or how great it's supposed to be. If you can't stick to it, you're screwed. You have zero chance. But if you like, yeah, if I do legs on Monday, chest and back and arms on Wednesday, and chest and shoulders on Friday, it's like, yeah, I like that. I feel like I can really put in a good effort and keep that going. It's like, great. That's a good sign right there. That's what you're looking for. As long as you can just get in the work on a regular basis, it will work. The actual formula is really not that important. Joseph Bello saying, Matt, most people will not want to put in the time into it and give up after a few months. I had a bad left hip, need to have replay it at some point. So I still practice Kung Fu and calisthenics. Yeah. So always remember that desire is our fundamental driver, my friends. Motivation is essential to your success. All of these things out there, like motivation's not important, I don't care about, that's a straight up lie, or they're idiots. Your motivation level is absolutely crucial to your success. I would rather break both my legs in a bike accident tomorrow than have a chronic loss of motivation, because intact motivation is far more important to me than intact legs. That's how important it is, because if you have motivation, you still have a chance. If you have no motivation, you're screwed 100%. So when it comes to desire, you can either amplify the desire or you can fit your circumstances to the desire. I don't want to work out every day. Okay, then don't work out every day. Can you work out every other day or twice a week or once a week? I want to work out twice a week. Okay, then do that. You have to base things off of what you're willing to do, off of what you want to do, because nobody's going to have a gun to your head forcing you to do this stuff. And even if you are in a situation where you're being forced to do the exercise, I guarantee you that situation is not going to last very long. It happens all the time where people go off to like boot camp for the military, or they're in super high levels of training in college sports or whatever, and someone is making them push themselves. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, you're definitely going to get in shape. But what happens when that is over? You graduate college and now you got a desk job. You had a coach forcing you to do the thing. Now you don't. And that's where that self-reliance comes from. If you can't make it happen for yourself, you're kind of screwed. And so you have to have that self-reliance. But yeah, moving and adjusting things would be a good way to go. Cristobal is asking, what would be the best progression for pistol squats, not keeping increasing reps, adding weight, pausing, or even changing the angle? Lots of ways to progress. That's one of the great things about progressive calisthenics, is that you can progress it so many ways. It is crazy. It's far beyond weight and reps. So it depends on where you are, of course, and what your abilities are, because progressive calisthenics means also progressing relative to your abilities. You know, if you had a range of motion limitation, there's a different progression strategy there. If you have a strength progression strategy limitation, there's a different progression strategy there. So it depends on what you need to progress in order to do that. But typically with pistol squats, what I do is I'm a big fan of like a hover lunge, as sometimes I call it, similar to a shrimp squat, where you're squatting down and you touch your knee to the floor behind your squatting heel. That's a good way, because any kind of weight that you're pulling backwards behind you is going to make the exercise harder. which is why I like the hover lunge, because instead of sticking the leg in front of you, you're sticking it behind you, which takes leverage away from the exercise and makes the leg work a hell of a lot harder. So a lot of times I'll have people doing that instead of the pistol. And then I'll have them go with either on an elevated surface, or they'll just bend their leg more so they can get deeper, so getting more range of motion. But I also almost always use upper body assist for single leg techniques for several reasons. One is that it improves your stability. Two, it improves your ability to get lower. And three, it makes the exercise a hell of a lot safer and you're not twisting and torquing things around. You can also adjust the amount of weight between your hands and your feet very, very easily. So usually it's an adjustment between how much weight is on your hands versus how much is on your feet. And then if they've got the good depth hover lunge going on with no assistance at all on their hands, which alone is pretty hard, then they would go into the pistol squats, usually on an elevated surface, and then come down. So that way you are able to get your leg to hang down a little bit and then bring it up in front of you. And then your arms are out in front, and then the arms come closer towards you, because again, pulling weight back makes it a lot harder. So if you can do pistol squats with your arms pretty close to your chest, then that's a good place to be. And then at that point, I would start adding the weight. And if possible, add a weight vest. Don't do the whole, pistol squat with the weight out in front of you kind of thing, because that's going to make it easier. It does make it harder, but I would much rather be screaming bloody murder with 5 pounds on a weight vest than holding a 40-pound dumbbell out in front of me. The less weight you need and the more you can use leverage, the better in my book. Hope that gives you some ideas. Super Prime 117. Hey, Matt, how much of a break would be the best between sets when doing contrast training? Rest as needed, as I always say. Just rest as needed, because there's a million different variables that influence how much you need to rest. And many of those variables are changing for you on a day-to-day basis. So it doesn't make any sense to give you any sort of dogmatic, like rest 90 seconds or whatever, because the more muscle you use, the more rest you need, the more conditioned you are, the more tired you are, the more focused you are, the breathing you do, how fast you're moving, what your fatigue level is like, what your stress level is like, your physical stress, your emotional stress, your mental stress. Like there's all these sorts of things that influence how much fatigue and stress you have at the end of a set. So that's why I say just rest as needed. Rest enough to feel like you can put a good effort into your next set, but not so much that you're getting so cooled down and you're getting distracted and feeling like you're losing your focus. Dave is coming on saying, hey, Matt, how do you recommend balancing the large number of tools, calisthenics, kettlebells, barbells, etc., when aligned methods with goals? Sorry, I know that's vague. No, not at all. So always remember, folks, that there's a million ways that we can condition our body, but fundamentally, they largely all just do the same thing. It all boils down to the fundamental level in fitness. A fundamental approach teaches us that exercise is usually just different flavors and different methods that all basically do the same thing. Like when people ask me, like when I'm doing calisthenics all the time, and they're like, why don't you lift weights? I'm like, because I feel like it's doing the same thing. When I was big into the calisthenics, for a month, I did only calisthenics training, and I was like, okay, back to the weightlifting. Here we go. And I was doing like overhead press and lunges and everything. And I was like, it's the same thing. Like my body is doing the same thing. It's not experiencing anything really different. I mean, the flavor is a little bit different, but it really isn't doing anything different on my body, because I'm still training it programming wise and stuff the same way. So I'm just going to do whatever I want, which was more the bodyweight training, because I like the feeling of it and the autonomy and the independence, but fundamentally it's not doing anything different. So I know the tools seem different and they seem like they're doing things, but at the end of the day, you're still just doing bicep curls. At the end of the day, you're still doing hip extensions, lunges, and squat and push pull. We were talking earlier about what type of exercises have carryover. You're still push, pull, and squat, barbell training, push, pull, and squat, calisthenics, push, pull, squat, kettlebell, push, pull, squat. It's the same thing. It really isn't all that different. So go with just based on personal preference. Or if you have any particular thing that just seems to work better, you're like, I don't know why, but man, if I do rows with a kettlebell, it just feels like it hits my back in a whole different way. Well, good. That's a learning opportunity to figure out what you're doing different, because it's not the kettlebell. Remember, your muscles are driven by your nervous system. Tools and exercises don't do anything to your muscles. They're just the application. It's like the road I drive down isn't driving my car. I'm driving the car. The road is just the application. The exercise and the tool is just the application. You're the one telling your muscles what to do. Don't think the tool is doing it, because it's not. It's not a chicken before the egg sort of thing. So go based on preference, and experiment and see what you like. But ultimately, it's not really doing anything that terribly different. Dr. Magenta, I like that avatar. Very cute dog. Sorry. Conversation between the two. Wolfie Dragon, always good to see you. Hey, Matt, I'm put on a bit of weight, so did a crazy thing instead, excuse me, pardon, and joined the gym. Oh, that is crazy. What are you doing that for? You don't need a gym. Of course. I'm actually taking my kids to Florida. All walking around the park should help me lose some weight. Oh, yeah, dude, walking? Oh, God. I know a lot of people criticize me for it, but I don't think there's anything anything better than walking when it comes to weight. Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, fat is fuel, right? It is caloric fuel, and you're going to get rid of it by burning it. You have to just burn the damn stuff off. If you had gallons of gasoline in your car and you're like, how do I get rid of this? I can't carry it away. You burn it. So when it comes to weight loss, I look at it like diet is defense and physical activity is offense, right? Yes, of course you want to manage your diet. Of course you don't want to be too inhibitive. Yes, diet is very important, absolutely. But damn it, when it comes to losing weight, burn that stuff off. Be physically active as much as you can all the time. I don't care what you're doing, because there's no such thing as weight loss exercise, because everything burns calories. So just do whatever you can. But the stuff you can do a lot of, like walking, is going to be a good way to go. If you're like, yeah, I do 1,000 kettlebell swings, but I can only do it once a week, that's good. You're going to burn some calories during that, but you're only doing it once a week. What good is it going to do you? It's not a very big influence. What are the things that you can do a lot of consistently? Walking certainly can fit that bill. Since moving here in Denver, I live in this nice little suburban area. I've been doing a lot more walking myself. I find it's very, very beneficial. All right, let me make sure I'm not getting too off track here. Yep, I got those covered. Okay, here's another lesson that people just don't learn until too late. Pardon me, folks. The lesson is that there's no single diet or workout plan that's going to fix your problems. And this is something I call, it's like a marriage mentality. They're like, I just need to find that one plan. I want to find that one workout program or approach that's going to take me from where I am now to the promised land of the results that I want, kind of thing. Never happens. Okay. There's no single approach of any kind that's going to take you from A to Z, or in most cases, even A to B. What almost always happens when people get a good amount of success is it's kind of this winding journey with strategies where they're like, I wanted to get in shape. So I started going to the gym and I was lifting weights. And, I started to notice these injuries. So then I took up kettlebell training, and the kettlebells really helped. It got my posterior chain going a lot better. It was a lot easier on my shoulder, the barbell, but the kettlebells kind of got a little stale after a while. So then I got into calisthenics and band training. I like the autonomy. And you talk to them like 5 years later and they're like, got this toolbox of things that they do. And it's like, yeah, I do this thing for several weeks and I'll go do this other thing. And then I'll have this one. Sometimes if I'm just kind of feeling like I just can't feel my best, I'll focus on eating a lot of meat and veggies for a while. And then once I start to get a little antsy at that, I'll get a lot more of kind of a Mediterranean type of food going on with some whole wheat pasta. And they've got a lot of different things that they're doing. And this is why I'm always telling people, don't get locked into any one thing, because everything has its limitations. No matter what you choose, you're going to be very, very limited. So that's why you want a lot of irons in the fire. You want a lot of tools at your disposal, because the more tools and strategies you have, the more versatility, freedom, and autonomy you're going to have. And you're going to be able to match your plan and your strategies to your circumstances. If you ever wanted to guaranteed screw yourself over, it's be like, I do this diet and I don't ever deviate from it whatsoever. One, even if you can, that sounds miserable. And two, you're going to change, man. Your circumstances are going to change. I was talking with my friend the other day. He was a vegan for 8 years, and he took me out to a steak restaurant when he was leaving here in Denver. I was like, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I was like, hey, wait a minute. What are we doing here? Like, this is a steak restaurant. Like, they don't have vegan on the, he's like, yeah, I don't do that so much anymore. I'm like, whoa, holy smokes. He's like, yeah, I started off with a little chicken and fish for a while. And, and he did it for his own reasons, largely for health and everything. But it was like, yeah, you can't have any one thing last forever. And when we're trying to force one, like I'm married to this diet or I'm married to this one approach kind of thing, that's when we run into trouble. Give yourself the freedom and flexibility to change, adopt, discard, variety, make anything happen. Don't feel like I've got to find that one thing that's going to take me to the promised land, because chances are no one thing ever will. You have to have kind of a amalgamation of things that's going to be the best thing for you personally. Spicy J saying, hey, Matt, that right there hits home. Glad to hear. Had a bad hip and now exams in a month. Thinking of regressing it back from 5 a week to 3 or 2. Good. Yeah, to mentally recover from it all. How do you overcome the FOMO? Well, there's 2 ways you can think about this, my friend. One is, I guarantee you're missing out. Where FOMO comes about because it's like, oh, I'm not doing the best I could. And I know I'm not getting as much as I could out of it. And I'm leaving gains on the table. Yeah, I guarantee you that's always happening. 100% that is happening. And there's nothing you can do to ever stop that. Any type of perfectionism that makes you think I'm optimizing things, that's a complete illusion. I guarantee no matter what you're doing, you're losing out somewhere. The question though is just, what do you not mind losing out on? Like, I'm a mountain biker, I'm a bike racer, and all this stuff. I suck as a swimmer. If I can swim across a swimming pool, I'm thrilled, right? For me, swimming is just not drowning, staying alive when I'm in the water. That's what it. So do I stay up late at night thinking, what do I do? I'm not a very good swimmer. Yeah, if I was a triathlete, that might be a problem. But, I don't care how well I can swim. It's not my thing, so it doesn't matter to me. It only matters to you if it matters to you. So I guarantee you're missing out. That's one of the best ways to kind of approach FOMOs. I guarantee you're missing out. Second is, when we're trying to really push for our best outcomes and results, you're going to be able to do that, but you can't do it all the time. This is what I call the Everest level of results. Going to the top of Everest, right? We know we can do it. We know human beings can get to the top of Everest. If you have everything work for you, you have proper planning, and you have a lot of work and tenacity, and yes, some degree of luck, you can get to the top of Everest. But you sure as hell can't live there. You can't stay there. And we all have that level of performance and health and muscle and strength that we can get there, but we can't stay there all the time. And a lot of times life is just gonna prevent you from getting that. And that's the last little thing that I want you to know, that a lot of people learn too late, is life is just gonna get in the way sometimes. It's just going to prevent you from living your best, healthiest life. It just is. In the past several weeks for me personally, I've been going through hell ever since moving through Denver. Nothing about Denver or this place itself, but I've been kicked in the teeth personally, professionally. I've had 2 bicycles stolen in a week. I've had some serious heartache going on. I've just been having one thing after another. What do you think my diet and exercise habit is like right now? It is in the crapper big time. I'm barely eating. I'm getting terrible sleep, like physiologically, mentally, and emotionally. I'm not in my best place right now. Haven't been for a while. Probably won't be for a fair bit more time now. Okay? I'm working through it. I'm getting through it and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, life just gets in the way sometimes. In a best case scenario, that wouldn't happen, but it's life. Life doesn't give a damn about your perfect diet or workout plans. So what do? You just do what you can with what you have, as my grandfather always said. If you only have a little bit of time and energy and a little bit of resources, as I've had for the past several weeks, well, then use a little. I'll jump up here, get a couple sets of pull-ups, maybe some chest flies and stuff. There, I'm done for the day. That's all the energy I have. I just can't even right now with exercise. I just can't even with diet. Today I had my first salad in a month. All last week, if I had more than a couple hundred calories, I felt like I was going to throw up. So I would literally have a granola bar, and that would be lunch, right? Life just gets in the way sometimes, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So you keep doing what you can with what you have. If you don't have much, you keep doing a little bit, because it's all about that consistency and that momentum. It's still keeping going. You don't stop. You don't be like, oh, there's nothing I can do if I can't keep it perfect or anything. You just keep going, because as I'm coming out of this serious funk, as things will get better, which inevitably they do, I'm going to hit the ground running, and I'm going to be glad because I'll still have kept what I can out of everything. So change is inevitable, my friend. It's going to come and upset your apple cart, and it's going to suck in your fitness journey. You got to just do what you can with what you've got. And because I promise you, if you stop and then when your circumstances improve, you're going to wish you hadn't stopped. You still wish you would have done something for sure. Frogman is saying, yeah, when I have lots of stress, I can always lift and stay very strong, but try keeping reasonably trim. Geez, I find that tough. Yeah, and it's weird too, how things change from one hard time to another. You know, there's been hard times when I just destroy my workouts because I pour my anxiety and my anger into the workouts. And other times, like I could barely get a set of push-ups in and push myself because emotionally I'm just totally drained. It's weird from one circumstance to the next. So yeah, when you've got the runway to do good things and be strong, great, go for it. But give yourself some slack, friends. Be gentle on yourselves. That's I guess one more lesson here is beginners and people who are starting out, they're way too hard on themselves. You're way too hard on yourself. The people who have been in this game a long time have learned you've got to be gentle on yourself. The negative talk, I can't do it. This isn't worthwhile. I can't do this. I'm not the kind of person you got to ditch all that sort of thing. The people who succeed learn to be kind and gentle to themselves in this space. They give themselves flack. They give themselves leeway. And being too hard on yourself isn't going to win you any battles. And that's the last lesson that people just learn all too late. But excuse me. But anyway, I am going to vamos, my friends, and head off into the city for some more fun and frivolity. But thank you so much, as always, for coming on. It's always greatly appreciated. Again, the audio replay for this will be coming on podcast directories in the next 24 to 48 hours. Don't forget to subscribe to the RDP newsletter for updates on that on reddeltaproject.com. Subscribe here to the channel, like up, thumbs up, all that good stuff. Helps to grow the channel. I sincerely appreciate it because this content is free for you, but it is not free for me. It does cost me to put this out every single week. So your support is always greatly appreciated. Again, with the links down below for the books and the resources in the RDP library. I am working currently on the, I think it's the 15th book. Technically, it's the amalgamation of the entire fundamental approach to fitness. So keep an eye out for that coming out hopefully later this summer. And as always, I bid you adieu.